A characteristic of the current Republican Party, MAGA media, and the MAGA ideology at large that I have articulated to you all many times that I just don't understand. Well, it's most of it, but one component I don't understand even more than the rest is this bizarre alignment with Russia in their invasion of Ukraine from MAGA. I'll give you examples later on in this segment, but why are they so anti-Ukraine? Not just let's engage in a rational conversation about aid, and you can land on different sides of how much and what types, and okay, fine. And I can argue to you why I think we should be sending a lot of aid to Ukraine. You could have a good faith argument that a certain figure was too much for you. I'm not saying any concerns about that makes you crazy. I'm saying what MAGA says about Ukraine and how they root on Russia is proof of a pretty frightening ideology. And a comedian / political commentator, Trae Crowder, who describes himself as the liberal redneck, he broke this down really nicely in a video that he posted on social media. Again, it's Trae Crowder if you want to find him. And there's a little humor, but also he does get to the core of probably what we're seeing in this current moment with MAGA. Then, like I said, we'll look at some of the examples I'm talking about.
Used to be every American understood that Russia, or at least the Russian government, was our enemy, right? At least until the Cold War was famously ended by renowned pugilist and diplomat Rocky Balboa. That's how it was. Yet today you have American boomers who grew up in that era openly supporting Russia all the time. Why? Well, it's at least partly because Daddy Trump says so, of course, but it's also partly because they've identified Putin as being anti-woke, and that's kind of all that matters. Sure, Russia has long opposed the foundational precepts of our democracy, but these MAGA types see Putin over there saying things like, in Russia, we have only 2 genders and no black people. And they're like, say less, buddy, that's all I needed to hear. Right? That's like, Jesus Christ, nobody let these people find out how much jihadists hate the gays, or else things are going to get real weird around here. There's a couple things going on with this, right? First of all, the infamous interview. Never thought I'd be rooting for Putin to hurl a journalist out a window, but then I watched him sit across from Tucker Carlson's fart-smelling face for a couple hours, and I was just like, please defenestrate this man. But he didn't. Guess he thought it was better to just lie to Tucker and his legions of useful idiots. They ate it all up. Putin sitting there in an interview like, Russia would never invade Poland. Do you have this in America? Do you do this? Putin's doing that because he wants us to stop funding Ukraine, and he very well may get his wish on account of the tire fire big top shit show that is the GOP House. House leader MAGA Mike already said they weren't going to vote for more Ukraine funding because it doesn't include border support. It's like, what? Y'all killed the border support that y'all also wrote. But they don't want to fund Ukraine. Again, y'all, back in the day, if Russia so much as made another country sandwiches, we'd send a whole ass army over there and start shooting everybody till they switched to cheeseburgers instead. But now that Russia's invaded an ally that just so happens to have once hurt Trump's feelings, now all of a sudden the party of hawks thinks war is a waste of money. Okay. And Trump himself publicly said that he would let Russia do, quote, whatever they wanted to any of our NATO allies. And his insane supporters lap that right up like they do everything else. Y'all, now more than ever, I wish we could somehow take the younger 1980s versions of these current day papaws and bring them forward in time so they could whoop their own asses for somehow forgetting both that Donald Trump was naught but a laughable silver spoon douchebag and Ivan Drago was the bad guy. Love y'all.
Wow. That is how it's done, Trae Crowder. We're going to have to see if we can collaborate. That's so wonderfully explained. And the humor does sort of lighten up what is such a horrific phenomenon. Right now, this is particularly pressing given the NATO summit that is just wrapping up. And we've been seeing from these MAGA folks, they have this sentiment that they direct towards something like the NATO summit of, ugh, the globalists. And in reality, what NATO represents is something that has furthered the stability of the globe. Are we saying it's just perfection? All the countries and all the initiatives that have ever been supported is perfect? No, what we're saying is the existence of NATO is much more in the interest of peace than anything else. That's what we've seen throughout its history. And people losing sight of that in the name of this globalist obsession is baffling. And then, why are they so enamored by authoritarian governments like Putin's, like Xi Jinping's? Trump just absolutely urinates in his pants every time he talks about Xi Jinping. He loves him so much. And then Kim Jong-un, Viktor Orban right now Trump is meeting with. I'll read you some reporting about that in a second here. And the reason, it seems, is because as democracy has failed their ideology, meaning their ideology is not popular, thus it's hard to get power through democracy, they're starting to look for something else. And it's not that deep of an ideology for a lot of people, I think. There's more of a gut thing, which Trae Crowder was tapping into, mentioning that the sort of, oh, we hate the gays too attitude of these right-wing governments is an oversimplified embodiment of what we're talking about here, what the broader phenomenon is, which is this far-right, regressive, worldwide ideology that wants to bring us back, wants to undo progress that many of the countries in the world have made over recent years. And so that puts in alignment with each other some strange bedfellows, as the phrase goes. If you've been watching this show and you're not yet subscribed, I ask that you do just click that subscribe button. Very easy, free, but it makes quite the difference. Back to the video. And before talking about this further, to remind you, one of the leaders in this pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian nonsense since the invasion has been Tucker Carlson, especially when he was on Fox. He got a lot of attention for stuff like this.
But is there another reason we should side with Ukraine over Russia? Russia is a much more significant country by every measure. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries that don't care anything about the United States. China, which is the actual threat. Why would we take Ukraine's side? Why wouldn't we on Russia's side? I'm totally confused. So much. Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Has he shipped every middle-class job in my town to Russia? I should say, for the record, I'm totally opposed to these sanctions, and I don't think that we should be at war with Russia. And I think we should probably take the side of Russia if we have to choose between Russia and Ukraine. That is my view. But Ukraine and Russia. And I'm serious. Like, why do I care? Tell you why. And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am? Because
rooting for a country that is threatening to destabilize the entire world, meanwhile slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people, sacrificing hundreds of thousands of their own citizens to be a part of this endeavor, all because of the lust for power from one man and his regime, Putin. And again, sometimes I think people, how to properly articulate this, get out of making a thoughtful argument by just going, oh yeah, boo, you think Putin's so bad, oh, they're enemies, they're evil, is that what you think? And I don't really know why that is effective. We saw Tucker Carlson in a past segment just go, oh, I like Putin, and do his weird laugh thing as a way of trying to portray those concerned about this weird admiration for leaders like Putin and ideologies like the one he represents, as if that's just laughable, that it's a thing. But then you have clips like that obviously demonstrate it is a thing. And it's about the characteristics and values that so often we as a country and allies of ours don't fully embody, but we should be attempting to. And I thought what many of these conservatives would have identified with are those unique American principles that fly right in the face of the principles and priorities of regimes like Putin's. It was supposed to be one of the things our values contrasted with was the values of authoritarians around the world. But now we've just flipped that on its head. And I do think that comes from a deep place of understanding that this ideology is not popular enough to win, at least as much as they'd like to attain the power they want to attain in our country. So if democracy is going to fail them on that front, then we might as well throw it out altogether, is the ideology we're seeing from some. And Marjorie Taylor Greene spews stuff like this constantly.
And while I'm still committed to saying no money to Ukraine, and that country needs to find peace, not war, and while I will look at a camera and directly tell Zelensky, you better leave your hands off of our sons and daughters because they're not dying over there.
Why is she speaking like she's some brave, truth-telling hero? No, what? I don't get it. Sometimes if you're out in the audience and you find yourself listening to the show and going, I just don't get that. But surely if you have to watch as much right-wing content as I do to prep for the show, I would be able to come to you with some explanation of not their correct argument, but the logical flow of the argument. I don't have it for you. I don't know what the logical argument is they're supposed to be making, even if I would disagree with it. I don't know what it is, okay? I'm really struggling. And so then I have to rely on, is this just an alignment with ideologies that are dangerous and authoritarian, an abandonment of our democratic constitutional principles? And Trump has embodied that, running away from those very principles more than anybody else. But this then trickles down. I think if Trump said, I hate what Russia's doing and I'm going to be powerfully, aggressively against it and support Ukraine as Russia tries to take over sovereign territory, Russia is choosing to prevent peace every single day. The way that we get peace is by disincentivizing their aggression. Not saying, oh, we'll stop giving aid to Ukraine in their defense of themselves because we think then you'll stop doing the thing you're doing. How does that make sense? But this, I do think, is an example of Trump just directing a lot of his followers, because I think those followers could get on board with, all right, the dear leader's saying that we're going to support Ukraine. Woohoo! But because this has been the line now, you have Trump supporters saying stuff like,
I think that people are just ridiculous that they think that Putin's such this enemy. He isn't doing anything. He just wants back what was his.
But he invaded
What was his.
He invaded Ukraine,
That's fine.
killing thousands of people.
That's fine. That's fine with me.
As a veteran yourself, does it concern you at all that Russian aggression could move even beyond Ukraine?
I don't think Putin's a problem. I think Zelensky's the problem.
This administration is trying to start a war with Russia. Russia's not our enemy.
if Russia has to stop their invasion because the strength of Ukraine, in part because of support from countries like the United States, is so significant, then the possibility of us ever having to come into a direct war with Russia just decreased. It just decreased. That's the point. That's what we're doing this for. It's not just dumping money for dumping money's sake. It's understanding for the sake of our ally and the stability of the entire world, thus our national security, this is something we need to do. Now, I did mention to you that this is happening. BBC reports Donald Trump met Viktor Orban in Florida on Thursday night, just weeks after the Hungarian Prime Minister met Russia's Vladimir Putin. His visit to Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach is the latest in a number of meetings between the two men. And it's not wrong to meet with these leaders. It's wrong to align so much with them. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. And if you want to get more content, you're thinking, no, this is the last video I hadn't watched from the channel. I need more content. I want to support the work this show does. You can do that by clicking the join button below.